The old playground sat crooked at the edge of town, half swallowed by weeds and silence. Rust clung to the swing chains like dried blood, and the plastic slide, sun-bleached and sagging, creaked even when the wind was still. Deputy Grace Halley hadn't expected much from the call. Teen prank, maybe. Vandalism. But the K-9 Thor stopped cold at the base of that broken slide. Not a sound, not a bark. Just trembling limbs and a low whine that sounded too much like grief. She knelt beside him, then saw it. Just an edge. Something buried. Something wrong. The sun hung low over Merrill Creek, casting long amber shadows through the thinning October trees. The playground had been forgotten years ago, after the mill shut down and young families started leaving town. The fence was broken in 3 places. Weeds crawled up the legs of the merry-go-round like veins. Everything felt rusted, wrong, abandoned by time. Deputy Grace Halley stood at the edge of the wood chips, one hand resting on her holster, the other clutching Thor's leash. The K-9, a 6-year-old German shepherd, had gone stiff. Not tense, not alert, just frozen. His ears lay back, and a soft, high-pitched whine slipped from his throat. "Thor," Grace said, kneeling beside him. "What is it, boy?" He didn't move. His front paws quivered on the edge of the plastic slide's base, as if some invisible line kept him from going further. Grace scanned the ground. The mulch was compacted, but disturbed. A dip, maybe 6 inches across. Not fresh, but not old, either. Someone had been here. She took out her gloves, pressed a hand into the mulch. The earth felt softer beneath. Her fingers brushed something cold. Metal. Grace looked around. Nothing but trees and empty swing sets. She took her radio from her vest. "Unit 2 to dispatch," she said. "Got a possible buried object at the old Northside playground. K-9's alerting." "Copy that, Unit 2. Back up en route. Do you require EMS?" "Not yet," she said, then glanced at Thor. "But send CSU." By the time the second cruiser rolled up, the sun was already bleeding into the trees. Sergeant Tom Denner climbed out slow. He was pushing 60, with joints like gravel and eyes that didn't miss much. Grace used to admire him. She still did, on the days he wasn't drinking. "Hell you find?" he asked, sipping lukewarm coffee from a thermos he hadn't washed in years. "You tell me," Grace said, nodding toward the slide. "Thor's frozen." Denner frowned. He looked at the dog, then back at the ground. "You dig?" "Just scratch the surface. There's metal under the mulch." He sighed. "Where's your shovel?" She went to the trunk of her cruiser, pulled out the spade, and walked back slowly. As she dug, the sound of metal against dirt echoed louder than it should have in that dead place. Thor remained perfectly still. After 4 inches, the tip of a small metal box emerged, no larger than a lunch pail. It was padlocked, scratched. Grace knelt beside it, breath short. "You recognize it?" she asked Denner. He didn't answer, just crouched and stared. Then he said, "That's Avery Ward's." Grace blinked. "From the—" "Yeah," Denner said. "From the Cordell case. 07. She leaned back, heart ticking faster. Avery Ward had vanished on Halloween night, 2007. He was 8 years old. Last seen leaving the fall festival with a stuffed bat and a plastic pumpkin full of candy. His name had haunted the town for years. No body, no suspects, no closure. "How can you be sure it's his?" she asked. "Because I took it from his desk," Denner said quietly. "It was evidence." The kid wrote his name in marker on the bottom. He reached down, brushed away dirt, turned the box over. The name was still there. Avery W. Inside the precinct's evidence room, files from old cases sat yellowed and ignored. The Cordell case had been stuffed into had been labeled unsolved, a polite way of saying forgotten. Grace and Denner stared down at the box, now resting on the metal table, in interview room 2. It sat between them like something alive. Neither had dared open it yet. The CSU team would want photos, gloves, chain of custody. But Denner looked like he was 5 seconds from cracking it open with his bare hands. "Tom," Grace said, "talk to me. Why was it in evidence?" It was found in Avery's desk at school the week after you went missing. Principal turned it in. What was in it? Drawings. Mostly. Some weird ones. One showed the playground. Same slide. Someone under it. Grace exhaled, slow. You think he was hiding something? I don't know. Maybe he saw something. Maybe someone saw him. She looked through the two-way mirror. Thor was asleep outside, curled near the heater. She envied him. Dogs live by instinct. Humans had to make sense of things, and sometimes there just wasn't any. The next morning, Grace walked through the old Cordell case files. Avery's parents had moved to Ohio 2 years after he vanished. There were no siblings, no credible witnesses. The only person who had ever been questioned more than once was Jonah Fisk, a former maintenance worker who lived in a trailer near the woods. Jonah was a loner. Odd. Rumors swirled around him after Avery disappeared. Grace remembered hearing them in high school, how Jonah liked to watch kids at the park, how he talked to himself, and dug holes in his yard at night. But nothing ever stuck. He had no criminal record. He moved away in 2011, or so they thought. Grace pulled his file. Current address. Unknown. Last known location. Maple Hollow Road. She froze. That was less than 3 miles from the playground. That afternoon, Grace took Thor and drove to Maple Hollow Road. It was more forest than pavement, with trailers slumped between trees like forgotten appliances. One mailbox leaned sideways, splintered and rusted. J. Fisk, number 117. She pulled up and killed the engine. Thor gave a short grunt from the back seat. Yeah, Grace muttered. I feel it too. The trailer was sunk into the earth. Its porch rotted through in places. Wind chimes made of silverware clinked gently from a nail above the door. A stuffed bat, the cheap plastic kind sold at dollar stores, hung by a string from the porch light. Grace stepped up, knocked. No answer. She knocked again. Harder. Still nothing. She circled back, glanced through the side window. Her breath caught. There were drawings, dozens of them, pinned to the wall above a small desk. Childlike scrawls. Crayon, pencil, chalk. All of them showed the same thing. A boy beneath the slide, curled into a ball, eyes wide. And always, someone standing behind him in shadow. Back at the station, Grace called Denner. We've got enough to bring him in, she said. Denner didn't answer right away. Then, I'll meet you there. 2 hours later, Jonah Fisk sat under fluorescent lights, his eyes dull, hands trembling. His beard was gray and patchy. He looked tired and scared. I didn't hurt that boy, he said. No one said you did, Grace replied. But you drew him, over and over. Jonah shook his head. I just see things sometimes. Like what? He swallowed. Memories. But not mine. Grace didn't respond. Just slid the metal box across the table. Jonah's face drained of color. I buried that, he whispered, so it wouldn't spread. Wouldn't what? Jonah looked her dead in the eye. For once, he sounded completely sane. You think this town just forgets its sins? No, it hides them, like rot under floorboards, like bones under slides. Grace's hands curled into fists. What's in the box, Jonah? He stared at it. You already know. They opened it that night, with CSU and 2 witnesses present. The box creaked when it opened, hinges straining. Inside were 6 folded pages, drawings, aged and brittle. Each one showed a different location in town. The swing set behind the library, the crawl space beneath the old church, the shallow creek behind Merrill Elementary, a storm drain by Route 6, the tunnel beneath the fairground bleachers, and the last, the slide. Each drawing had one thing in common. A small figure, eyes wide, mouth open, face frozen in terror. And behind him, in every image, was another shape, taller, dark, eyeless. Grace studied them for a long time. Her skin felt tight, her breath shallow. Then she noticed something. In the margin of the final drawing, so faint it could have been missed, was a name, J. Denner. Grace stared at the name scrawled in the margin. The ink had bled slightly over the years, feathering out like roots. but it was unmistakable. J. Denner. She didn't move, didn't speak, just stared, heart thudding, mind roaring. Tom Denner. Sergeant. Mentor. The man who taught her how to read a scene, how to steady her aim, how to trust a dog when the ground lies. He was in that box, on a dead boy's drawing. Thor let out a sharp bark from down the hallway. The sound cracked the silence like a whip. Grace blinked, shoved the drawing back into an evidence sleeve, and stood. Her mouth was dry. She needed air. She needed to think. She needed to not believe what she'd just seen. Denner's truck was gone when Grace stepped outside. It was just past 10 p.m., and the town had curled into itself like an old dog, one bar open, a single headlight rolling past the diner. She lit a cigarette she didn't remember buying and walked behind the station into the lot, where Thor paced in his kennel. He didn't bark again, just watched her. She crouched. "Good boy," she whispered. "You knew something was wrong the second we got there, didn't you?" Thor pressed his head gently into her shoulder. Grace let him stay there for a long moment, smoke curling around him like fog. She thought about the drawings, the 6 places, the hollow fear in Jonah Fisk's voice when he said he hadn't drawn them, that he'd just seen them, and the name, Denner. It wasn't just a coincidence. It couldn't be, unless she crushed the cigarette into the dirt, unless it was planted, unless someone wanted her to suspect Denner. The next morning, she drove to the first location from the drawings, the swing set behind the library. It was fenced off now, splinters on the seats, the chains tangled like nooses. Thor sniffed near the sandbox, pawed once, whined. Grace got the shovel. 3 inches down, she hit something hard. It wasn't a body. It was a bone, small, human, likely a finger. She radioed it in, but didn't wait for backup before moving to the second spot, the crawl space under the church. The priest on duty gave her a strange look, but let her in. Thor hesitated, then crawled inside. He didn't bark, just scratched. Another bone, this time a vertebrae. 2 for 2. She was shaking by the time she got to the storm drain on Route 6. Thor was panting now, pace urgent. A rib. The remains weren't whole, just fragments. A piece here, a shard there. She called CSU, asked them to treat all locations as active scenes. But inside, she already knew the pattern. Someone had buried these children as pieces, scattered, like a map, like a story no one wanted to put back together. By dusk, the station buzzed with activity. All 6 sites had yielded remains, each confirmed human, likely juvenile, none fully intact. Grace locked herself in interview room 1 with Jonah Fisk again. He looked worse, paler, like something inside him had cracked open and wouldn't stop bleeding. "You know who did this," she said. Jonah shook his head. "I didn't draw those pictures. I just found them. They were under my trailer. When? 3 weeks ago. I kept seeing the boy, the one from the slide, in dreams, waking up with dirt under my nails. I thought I was going crazy." "Maybe you are," Grace said flatly. "But maybe you're not the only one." She dropped the file on the table. Jonah flinched when it landed. 5 kids reported missing between 2001 and 2007, she said. All under 10. No suspects. No bodies. Until now. He stared at her. "And Denner," she asked. "Why his name?" Jonah's voice was almost a whisper, because he was always there. She pulled Denner's personnel files that night. There were commendations, letters, a long, impressive history. But there were gaps, too, transfers weeks unaccounted for. One particular note caught her eye. Temporary reassignment, special detail, community outreach program. That was from 2005, the year Miles Barton went missing from the county fairgrounds. One of the 6 drawings in the box had shown the bleachers behind the fair. Community outreach. Grace stared at the words until they lost shape. Then she flipped to a logbook, sign-in sheets, patrol reports, witness logs. The same pattern over and over. Denner's unit was always nearby. She didn't sleep that night. The next morning, Grace didn't go into the station. She went to the house Denner kept just outside of town. It was a split level, tucked deep off a gravel road. 2 deer feeders in the yard. A row of wind chimes made of old brass keys. She parked a quarter-mile away and walked the rest. Thor padded beside her, alert but silent. The lights were off. No car in the drive. No noise. She found the back door unlocked. Inside, the place was clean. Too clean. No dust. No clutter. Like a hotel waiting for a guest who never came. There was a locked room in the basement. Thor growled before they even opened it. Grace forced the door. What she saw made her knees weaken. Drawings. Hundreds of them. Pinned to every wall. Faded. Torn. All the same style as the ones in Avery's box. And in the center of the room, laid out like a shrine, was a rusted K9 collar. She picked it up. Rex. That had been Denner's first dog. Retired in 2006. Reported dead. But something didn't sit right. The collar was bloodstained. She confronted him just past midnight, met him at the station, brought him into interview room 3, and turned the recorder off. "I know," she said. Denner leaned back slowly. "You know what? The kids, the bones, the drawings, the room in your basement." Silence, then a long, soft chuckle. "You're good, Hallie," he said. "Took you less time than I expected." She felt her stomach twist. "You're confessing?" "No, just acknowledging." His eyes were calm. Too calm. "You think I killed them," he said. "Maybe I did. Maybe I didn't. Maybe the town kills kids like Avery all on its own, slow and quiet, over years. Maybe I just helped it along." Grace stood. "We're done here." As she reached for the door, he said, "He came to me first, you know? The boy, before the slide." She froze. He said, "Please don't let them take me." Grace turned. "Who?" Denner's smile faded. "They're not people," he said. "Not exactly. And they don't die easy." Denner was in custody by sunrise. The media descended by noon. CSU confirmed all 6 sites contained partial remains of missing children. Forensics began matching dental records. Jonah Fisk was cleared of all suspicion. And Grace? She sat in her cruiser with Thor, parked outside the Northside playground, and stared at the slide. Something still felt wrong. The pieces didn't fit. Denner hadn't fought arrest, hadn't denied anything, hadn't asked for a lawyer, but he also hadn't confessed. He seemed relieved, as if it was over. Or worse, just beginning. Thor barked once. A short, sharp sound. Grace looked down. He was staring at the sandbox, not the slide. The sandbox hadn't been disturbed. She stepped out, hand on her weapon. Thor dug. Fast, deep, urgent. Within seconds, his paws hit something solid. Not bone, not a box. A stuffed bat. Faded, moldy, plastic wings torn. The same one Avery Ward had last been seen holding. Grace's blood ran cold. The bat had never been found. Until now, buried deep. Beneath a different corner of the same playground, Thor kept digging. Then he stopped, whined, and backed away. Grace crouched, brushed dirt from the corner of something darker than soil. Cloth, a sleeve. She yanked her radio. Unit 2 to dispatch. But the signal cut out, just static. Then, behind her, the swing creaked. Grace turned. Nothing, just the wind. But Thor didn't move. He growled, low and long, staring into shadows behind the merry-go-round. Something was watching, and it wasn't done. The wind scraped across the playground like breath through teeth. Grace stood still, radio dead in her hand, the plastic bat half buried beside her. Thor stayed low, hackles bristling, eyes fixed on the shadow behind the merry-go-round. Grace rose slowly. "Show yourself," she said, voice flat, calm. Silence. Then the swing creaked again. Just once. Not the wind. The kind of creak that comes from weight. Thor let out a bark, sharp and guttural. He lunged toward the shadow, and Grace followed, flashlight cutting a trembling beam through the trees. Her boot caught on a root. She stumbled, then froze. Something stood just beyond the tree lean. Pale, tall, Still, for a second, it looked like a person. But then the head tilted. Not like a curious gesture, but like something trying to remember how to be human. Grace raised her weapon. Stop. Hands where I can see them. The figure backed away, slow, into the trees. Then gone. Thor barked again, frustrated. Pacing. Grace didn't pursue. Not yet. Her heart wasn't pounding. It was sinking. She turned back toward the sandbox. The bat was gone. No wind. No one near it. Just gone. The bones recovered from the 6 sites were officially identified that morning. Avery Ward, Miles Barton, Elijah Thorne, Sadie Fenn, Naomi Wicks, and Caleb Merrow, the mayor's own nephew. All gone without trace over 6 years. Until Thor stopped at that damn slide. And now, in Grace's hands, she held something else recovered from the sandbox that night. Something CSU hadn't logged yet. A folded piece of paper, brittle with soil and time. It hadn't been found with the bat. It had been beneath it. She unfolded it carefully. More drawings. But these weren't the boys. These were Denner's. His signature scrawled along the corner, and one word written across the top in block letters. The 7th. The image showed the playground again. But this time, the boy wasn't on the slide. He was in front of it, standing, facing someone, or something. The figure had no face, no hands, just a blur. But its body was draped in a uniform, and the boy was handing it something. A small box. Grace stared until her eyes burned. Denner hadn't just found the box in Avery's desk. He'd been given it by Avery himself. 3 days later, Denner requested to speak. No lawyers, no conditions. Just one thing. Grace Halley had to be alone. She entered the interview room with tape running and a second recorder in her pocket, just in case. Denner looked smaller, paler, but clearer, too, like whatever he was holding in had finally hollowed him out enough to speak. "I never killed them," he said. Grace didn't blink. "But you knew who did." He nodded. She waited. Then he said, "It wasn't a person." Grace's throat tightened. "What then?" "A debt." She stared. He continued, slowly. Merrow Creek was dying. The town was shrinking. No jobs, no money. Then 1999, there was this flood. Took out the mill, the bridge, half the trailer park. And then it came. What came? Denner leaned forward. The slide. Grace blinked. "You're not making sense." He smiled, bitter. "I know how it sounds. But that slide wasn't there before 99. Wasn't in any blueprints. Wasn't ordered. It just appeared. No one noticed because it looked like junk, same as everything else. But after that, every year someone disappeared." She didn't interrupt, didn't laugh, just let the words hang. "You're telling me the slide took them?" Denner shook his head. "Not the plastic. The thing inside it. Or under it." He leaned forward, voice lowering. "It's not what you think. It doesn't hunt. It waits. It makes you see things. Makes you choose. It needs someone to bring the child there. Someone the town trusts. Someone who'll never be suspected. Like a cop." Denner nodded. "I was the first." He looked up at her, eyes glinting with something deeper than fear. "I wasn't the last." She didn't sleep that night. Just sat in her living room, box of drawings on the table, one hand resting on Thor's back. Denner's words rang in her head. "I wasn't the last." If he'd handed off the role, who had it now? Who had been chosen or corrupted? To continue the pattern, she went back through the files. Dates, patterns, patrol logs, witness reports. Then she saw it. One name, Deputy Mark Ellison. He'd been first on scene for 3 of the recoveries. Last to leave the playground on the night, they found Avery's box, and he'd been transferred to Denner's unit in 2012, the year the disappearances stopped. Grace stood up so fast the chair scraped the floor. Thor growled low. She found Ellison at home. Small ranch house off Meadow Lane. 2 kids. 1 wife. Barbecue grill on the porch. The normalcy made it worse. He opened the door in sweatpants, blinking. "Grace." "We need to talk," she said. He hesitated, then stepped aside. "Boys are asleep." She walked in, noticed a faint smell of bleach under air freshener. She cut to it. "I know about Denner. I know what he told you." His face didn't change, didn't flinch, just emptied. "I didn't want it," he said quietly, "but I saw it, in the woods, behind the old fairgrounds, the same way he did. I didn't understand at first. Then the dream started. Then the slide showed up again." Her breath caught. "What do you mean again?" "It was gone," Ellison said. "After Avery. Town decommissioned the park. But then last week it came back." She swallowed. The swing creaked. Something watched me. He nodded. "That's how it starts." "Why keep helping it?" "I didn't," he said, voice cracking. "I fought it. Years. But it's never satisfied. When you resist, it punishes. Take someone close. Slowly. Quietly." He looked at her now, tears in his eyes. "My boy started sleepwalking last week. Grace's pulse skipped. Your son, 7 years old. He said a man in a hat whispers to him in dreams, that he wants to show him something under the slide. They got there just before dawn. The playground was shrouded in mist. The slide loomed, still crooked, still creaking softly in windless air. Grace walked first, Thor beside her, Ellison a step behind, carrying his son, barefoot, asleep, murmuring. They stopped at the base of the slide. The boy stirred. His eyes opened. And then he smiled. Grace's stomach dropped. The boy stepped down from his father's arms, walked slowly, kneeled at the mulch, and started to dig. Thor barked furiously. The boy's hands moved like they knew where to go. Ellison dropped to his knees. "Evan, stop please, buddy." Then the boy looked up at Grace, and his voice was not his own. "He left you something," he said. She couldn't breathe. He reached into the earth, pulled out a box, identical to Avery's. Same lock, same scratch marks, and a name written on the bottom, Grace H. Her legs buckled. Ellison grabbed the box, opened it, empty. But the boy's smile didn't fade. He turned to Thor, whispered something only the dog could hear. Thor froze, whined, and backed away. The next morning, Grace resigned. She didn't explain, didn't return her badge, just left. Thor followed her without question. They moved 2 towns over. No forwarding address. But even there, she saw it. In parks, in dreams. A slide that hadn't been there the day before. And sometimes, just before she woke up, she'd hear it. A swing creaking. A child's voice whispering, "Don't let them take me." Epilogue. A new family moved into Merrill Creek that fall. Young parents. A 6-year-old girl. She loved the playground. Said it was magical. Said the slide had stories to tell. The mother laughed it off. Until one morning she woke to find her daughter sitting by the window, smiling at nothing. "What are you doing, sweetie?" The girl pointed. "There's a dog outside," she said. "He says he's here to protect me." The mother looked. No dog, just fog, and the soft sound of swing, creaking,